So what was your reaction initially to the trade, and how have you felt about your time with the Fever, even just in this month so far?
Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm so excited. I think it's refreshing. I've been in Phoenix for the past 6 years. Was drafted out there. I've had a really great time. I've been very blessed with being around a lot of goats in the game and learning the game on another level. But again, like, this is just a new style, and this is the style that I thrive in. When you have people who can shoot,
especially last year, because talked about the physicality of a league, and so many games are that physical and they can get that. What does it mean what it's like to have Sophie Cunningham on your side? Caitlin Clark watched Sophie Cunningham ball out against the New York Liberty and said something about her that every Fever fan needs to hear. We'll get there. But first, let's talk about what actually went down in this game. Because Indiana just walked into a preseason matchup against the team most people are calling the 2026 WNBA champions, and absolutely ran them off the floor. Sophie Cunningham, coming off a season-ending MCL tear, dropped 14 points in 13 minutes. 13. The Fever didn't just win, they sprinted to a blowout and didn't stop running the entire night. If you're excited to see Caitlin and Sophie back on the court, then comment CC and Sophie down below. Played obviously USA basketball because you're excited. That's the first W game. For you, we go to exhibition in 9 months? Super excited. I think like coming in here, obviously this isn't a real game. I understand that, but that's how we treat it, like a real game. So I think anytime you get to put on your uniform and lace up your shoes, like, you don't take that for granted. Especially having come off of last year, and I didn't really get to do that very much. So I think for me coming into this game, just a lot of excitement, not a ton of nerves. Just like when Caitlin Clark jogged onto that floor, she hadn't played a real basketball game since July 15, 2025. That's not a short break. The 2025 season basically ate her alive. Quad issues first, then the thigh, then the groin, then the ankle. One thing stacking on top of another until she'd only played 13 games the entire year. So yeah, people were nervous walking into this preseason tip-off against New York. And the question wasn't really about winning. It was simpler than that. Could she just move the way she used to move? She admitted pre-game that she was super excited to get back in the flow, but she also CP'd to having nerves. And honestly, that makes complete sense after a year where her body kept letting her down and her mind had to carry all of that weight too. The version of Clark that Indiana needs isn't just a healthy Clark. It's a Clark who trusts her body again, who isn't flinching every time she changes direction or plants her foot to pull up. Not a ton of nerves. Just like get out there, run around. It's going to be probably a little sloppy here and there for both teams. That's kind of what preseason games are about. You give everybody some run. You figure out what lineups work, what don't, and everybody's just trying to get their footing again. And same goes for me too. So I think obviously can rely on the USA basketball stuff that I did and that experience of getting back to offer, my body feeling good. And bring that into today for sure. She finished 2 of 10 from the field in 17 minutes, and sure, that looks rough on paper, but the number that actually mattered came early. Off a screen from Monique Billings, she slipped into the lane, read the defense, and floated one and off the glass for the game's first bucket. It wasn't a highlight play. It was just Clark doing what Clark does, using her footwork, finishing softly, making it look like nothing. And after everything she went through in 2025, that quiet little floater landed like the answer to a question the entire fan base had been sitting with for months. Then she pulled up from 3, and it went in clean, quick release. No hesitation, no babying the ankle or the knee or anything else. And that's when cautious she looks okay turned into actual excitement. The Fever scored 32 points in the first quarter alone, and Clark's early make set the whole tone for that run. You mentioned Monique Billings, and I guess I'm just curious, when you spent time with her at USA Basketball before she even came into the fold here, how much did you think like this could be an interesting parent? Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a previous relationship with Mo before USA Basketball. And then getting to play with her was really fun. Obviously an athletic big that runs the floor well, has great hands, is very active defensively. Like those are the type of post players that I love playing with, and I thought we kind of created. Little bit of a bond, and more than anything, like she's a tremendous person as well, and those are the type of people that we want to bring into our locker room. She's a good soul. She puts the team before herself. The chemistry she built with Billings in transition was one of the more interesting things to watch in those 17 minutes, because the two of them had already logged time together during USA basketball, where Billings converted on more of Clark's assists than anyone else. That connection carried right into this game, with Billings sprinting to spots Clark was already looking at before the defense could rotate. And it produced 9 points for Billings off plays that started with Clark pushing pace the second Indiana touched the ball, and continued to throw, and we're seeing it right there. Beautiful touch. Billings down low. Nice pass, and was able to complete it and finish. And you can see Clark mentioned after the game that she wants to play fast and run in transition, because standing around waiting for the ball just lets the defense get comfortable and pick their matchups. Clark's play style runs on that exact idea, and running it at full speed, healthy, making reads before defenders can set their feet. That's what the offense looks like when everything's working. Post-game, Clark confirmed her body felt great and she felt fast, which she noted was very different from how she felt for most of last year. And then, in free agency, like we reached out mostly our front office. They did a lot of that work, and she was really excited about the opportunity. It kind of just worked out perfectly, and we were able to sign her. So really thankful that she wanted to be a part of our team, and I think she is a really perfect fit for us. An MCL tear isn't a sprained ankle you tape up and play through. It's surgery, then months of rehab where you're basically relearning how to trust a knee that betrayed you, then more months just trying to get cleared to practice with your teammates. And Sophie Cunningham didn't get that clearance until January 2026. She watched most of the 2025 season from the sideline after playing 30 games, including 13 starts before the injury ended everything. So when she checked into this preseason game against the New York Liberty, the team most of the league is already crowning as 2026 champions, the stakes for her weren't the same as anyone else on that floor. Everyone else was trying to win a preseason game. Cunningham was trying to prove something to herself. Back, your shoulders, your arms, your muscles. Then she replied, "Thank you, girl, I've been working on it." Cunningham puts it in again, and her third three-pointer on the not just that the knee held up, but that the shot was still there, that she could still get physical without flinching, that she could still be the player Indiana needed her to be when it mattered. And she answered all of it. Fast. In 13 minutes she dropped 14 points. And the way those points came is what makes the number worth talking about, because she didn't grind them out in the post or get to the free throw line 4 times. She hit 3 three-pointers, which means she was catching the ball, setting her feet and pulling the trigger with full confidence in a knee that went through surgery less than a year ago. Training camp yesterday, and first thing I look, I'm like, "Girl, you're back, your shoulders, your arms, your muscles." And she replied, "Thank you, girl, I've been working on it." Cunningham puts it in again, her third three-pointer on the night. But Nigel Laney Hamilton, I felt a little insecure. I looked at my back yesterday and I need to get rid of these rolls. She motivating all of us and just said that, on her year off, she just had time to really work on her conditioning, fine-tune the details. But how about Sophie Cunningham? And she said each three she knocked down stretched the Fever lead a little more, and told the Liberty defense there was no comfortable place to sag off her because she wasn't hesitating for even half a second. No extra gather, no second guessing, nothing in her body language that read, "I'm still working my way back." She just shot it like it was any other night. And a Fever. Cunningham comes up with the steal. The bounce pass to Raven Johnson. Cunningham puts it in. That was too easy. On defense, she brought the same aggression, getting into passing lanes, picking up 2 steals, contesting everything, setting hard screens for Clark that actually moved people. That kind of physicality isn't something you can perform after an MCL tear unless you've genuinely stopped worrying about the knee. And Cunningham stopped worrying about it publicly the moment she stepped onto that floor. Indiana was already without Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hall, both held out for precautionary reasons. So the minutes Cunningham absorbed weren't bonus minutes. They were needed minutes, and she filled them with 14 points, 2 steals, and a defensive intensity that visibly sped the whole game up. The Fever's rotations got tighter when she checked in. The pressure on Liberty ball handlers got heavier, and New York started making mistakes they weren't making in the first few minutes. I think the thing I appreciate about Sophie more than anything is she's never intimidated of the moment. She rises to the occasion every single time. You know she's going to have her teammates back. She loves when our backs are against the wall. She's going to be one that has the loudest voice, and she's going to be out there fighting and scrapping, and no matter what situation it is. Clark watched the whole thing either from the bench or from the floor right next to her. And after the game, she had something very specific to say about what Cunningham brings to this team. Because according to Clark, Cunningham rises to the occasion every single time and is one of the loudest voices out there fighting and scrapping when the pressure builds. She didn't pause or soften it. Every team in this league would probably love to have a player like that, Clark told reporters. I'm really fortunate she's on our side. Whether we're down 20, we're up 20, it's the same Sophie, and every single team in this league would probably kill to have a player like. So really fortunate that she's on our side. And Sophie's just a really cool person. She's a good soul, but when she steps on the floor, she's fierce, she's fiery, and she's going to do anything to help our team win. So I really appreciate that about her. The New York Liberty walked into this game as the team everyone's already penciling in as 2026 WNBA champions, and Indiana came in without Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull. Both held out for precautionary reasons. So most people probably expected a comfortable Liberty win or at worst, a tight game that didn't tell you much either way. What they got instead was 40 minutes of Indiana sprinting, and that's not a figure of speech. To Mitchell, fires, connects on the 3, takes the 3 and drills it. Oh my, wadded from Raven Johnson, she's a beast on the defensive end. Walker Kimbrough, I like that. The Liberty turned the ball over 24 times. Indiana scored 29 points. Directly off those turnovers. So every time New York got sloppy with the ball, the Fever were already flying the other way before the Liberty defense could recover and get set. That's not a couple of unlucky possessions. That's a recurring problem that Indiana manufactured through sustained defensive pressure from the opening tip to the final buzzer. Cunningham puts it in. That was too easy. Timmons creates space and drills it. He's into the 3. Yes, ma'am, the Beaver. Raven Johnson deserves a lot of credit for how those turnovers kept piling up because her stat line from this game looks like someone typed it in wrong. In roughly 17 minutes, Johnson put up 6 points, 8 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. And if you just read those numbers off a page, they seem hard to believe, but watch her on film and it makes complete sense. Prior the C's but swatted from Raven Johnson. She's a beast on the defensive end. Walker Kimbrough / She pressured every Liberty ball handler she could get to, sat in passing lanes instead of giving ground, and consistently anticipated where New York wanted to attack before they got there, which is exactly the kind of disruptive point guard defense that turns a good team's offense into a turnover machine. The 8 assists are almost a secondary story next to how active she was without the ball. Has 4 assists on the night so far, now trying to get a little bit of her own but slotted by Johnson. Strong move inside and lays it. Indiana outscored the Liberty 20-10 in fast break points, and that 10-point gap didn't come from one big run in the second quarter. It came from the Fever doing it over and over again for 40 straight minutes. Every loose ball, every made basket, every stolen pass turned into a sprint, and New York's rotation simply couldn't keep matching that pace as the game wore on. By the second half, Liberty players who normally look comfortable in their sets were getting caught mid-rotation with nowhere to go because Indiana was already scoring. Embrace the new pieces stayed together and they were connected, and they get that one to fall right there. Let's talk about the scoring because 5 Fever players finished in double figures against a team that's supposed to field one of the deepest rosters in the league. Kelsey Mitchell dropped 18 points and C.H. Hatchery Walker Kimbrough also finished with 18. So Indiana had 2 players tied for the team lead before you even get to Cunningham's 14. Michaela Timpson's 11 and Clark's contribution in her 17 managed minutes. 2 players at 18 apiece against the projected 2026 champions without 2 starters running a preseason rotation. That's a lot of firepower from a lot of different places. And I love the storyline too of absolutely torching. No pun intended. Delhied in the playoffs last year. I'm sorry, but had a phenomenal game. Got the hot hand. I thought last season she really elevated her game. In the lane, Tough Lay gets it to fall. And won. Timpson's 11 points came from exactly where Indiana needed them. In the paint, holding ground on the interior, and finishing through contact with Boston sitting in street clothes. And her ability to produce consistently in that spot matters a lot for how this team builds its identity. With Boston returning later in the season, Timpson's development as a scoring presence inside gives Coach Stephanie White real options for how she deploys her front court. Fad because working with Steph Curry and Clay Bin for so long, got to be cooking up the plays for sure. Just learning under Coach Kirk, and there's a lot of similarities between the two. And the 3 from Timmons dials it in. Justine Patad added 8 points and kept pulling her defender out to the 3-point line, which sounds simple until you realize what that does to a defense that wants to collapse on Clark and Cunningham in the paint. Patad is 64 in and she can shoot, so leaving her open to double someone else isn't really an option, and that forces New York into coverage decisions that create open looks somewhere else on every single possession. That's not a novelty. That's a real spacing weapon. Versatility to the game. 16 points on the night, and Bookie for the Fever knocks it down. The Liberty's bench rotation got visibly thinner as the second half progressed, and Indiana kept pushing the pace, and the final score of 109-91 reflects what the game actually felt like. A 18-point win that wasn't really that. Close down the stretch. New York starters couldn't slow the Fever down, and their bench couldn't match the energy when White went deeper into her rotation. A preseason game is a preseason game, but a performance this complete against this specific opponent without Boston and Hull, built entirely on a pace and pressure system that Indiana ran for a full 40 minutes without slipping. That's not nothing. That's a team that knows what it's trying to do and can actually do it. And the Fever ran all of it with a bench that just proved it can hang with the best roster in the league. Keep stacking days, stacking days. So good to be back. Oh my God, first up of the season. I was going to do it, but I'm not going to fever it up. You can brush off a preseason win, and normally that's the right call, but Indiana beat a Liberty team that's genuinely loaded. Did it without Boston and Hull, and did it by running a system that most people haven't fully seen from this Fever group before. That's a harder result to just scroll past. The whole 2026 Fever roster is built around Clark being healthy and playing fast. And this game was the first real evidence that the off-season assassin paid off, that her body's behind her now instead of working against her, and that the players around her are ready to run. Clark finished 2 of 10 from the field in 17 minutes, which isn't a great shooting night by anyone's standard, and Indiana still won by 18. That tells you the depth is real. The system doesn't fall apart when Clark isn't the one carrying the scoring load, and that's actually one of the more important things this game confirmed. Yeah, I think sometimes like it's taken a little bit out of context, like the off-ball stuff, and like we want to play in transition, and we want to play with a lot of pace. We want to outlet to near guard. If that's not me, I need to get down the court, and that allows people to come screen for me and get me open. It also makes the other team get cross-matched. They're not able to find their matchups. They want to get matched. Especially with me and Kelsey, like that presents 2 tough matchup opportunities. And the more I just stand around and wait for the ball, that allows them to get the matchup set that they want. So, it's supposed to be off the ball a little bit, especially in difficult situations. And I think patience and waiting for screens. And think about what Indiana deployed out there. Johnson running point defense and dealing out 8 assists. Timpson scoring 11 in the paint. Pat pulling defenders out to the 3-point line with her 64 in frame. Mitchell and Walker-Kimbrough each dropping 18 from multiple spots on the floor. Billings sprinting transition lanes with Clark. The Liberty couldn't find a weak spot because there wasn't one, and New York is not a team that usually struggles to find weak spots. Boston and Hall didn't even play. Indiana held them out as a precaution. Lower leg for Boston, hamstring for Hall, and the Fever still put up 109 points against the projected 2026 champions. So, the roster that ran New York off the floor wasn't even the complete version of what the Fever can put together on a given night. And that gap between what we saw and what's actually available is the part that should make people pay attention to Indiana as a real contender this year. It is tiring, it's hard. Drilling the ball up 94 FT. That's exhausting, and that's why we're going to do it to the other team. We're going to pick up Paul, we're going to guard. That's not fun for the other team's primary ball handler either. So, you're going to see a good variation of both, but I mean I'm going to be the primary ball handler. That's never going to change. Clark winning MVP has been a conversation since her first season, and a healthy Clark running with this much around her with Cunningham back and bombing threes with Boston, returning to anchor the paint with Johnson, disrupting everything defensively, with Padhead giving the offense another shooter the defense can't ignore. That's a team built to compete with anyone, not just on a good night consistently. New York will still lead most people's predictions. And honestly, that's fine because this Fever group has historically played sharper when they're the ones with something to prove, when the pressure is external, when nobody's expecting them to win. Indiana tends to run harder and compete longer, and a Liberty team that's been handed the 2026 title before a single regular season game has been played might find that motivation gap becomes a real problem come playoff time. We understood adversity and what it takes to get there. And also, I think people forget Ob didn't play in the overtime, and Kelsey didn't play in overtime of Game 5 trying to get to the finals. So I think we all have a belief of we can be there. We can get there. We know that there's going to be highs. We know there's going to be lows. I think especially me going into my third year, I think that's probably my first 2 years of my career is everything feels like it's really, really good or it's really, really bad. And that's just kind of how pro basketball works. Whether it's on the men's side, whether it's on the women's side, you kind of just got to stay right in the middle. I think Cunningham's return fills a role nobody else on this roster covers the same way. She scores from outside, defends physically, sets hard screens, competes at full volume, and does it all in situations where the game is actually on the line. When she checked into this game, the Fever's energy level went up noticeably, and the Liberty's margin for error went down fast. That's not player you just slot into a rotation and forget about. 14 points in 13 minutes against the team most people think will win the championship. Coming off an MCL tear in her first real game back, Caitlin Clark watched every minute of it from a few feet away. And after the final buzzer, she walked straight to the microphone and said exactly what she thought about Sophie Cunningham. After the game, Clark got asked about Cunningham, and she didn't pause or soften it. Every team in this league would probably love to have a player like that, Clark told reporters. I'm really fortunate she's on our side. That's not a polite post-game answer. That's Clark telling you exactly what she thinks after watching Cunningham drop 14 points in 13 minutes against the team. Most people expect to win the whole thing in 2026. Indiana goes into the regular season with Clark healthy. Cunningham back and already proving the MCL tier took nothing from her. Boston and Hall returning and a bench that just beat New York without them. If you're excited to see Caitlin and Sophie back on the court, then comment CC and Sophie down below. Subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen and we will see you in the next.